This afternoon, state legislators in Montana voted to censure Zoe Zephyr, a member of the State House of Representatives and a biological man who identifies as a woman. Now, earlier this month, after Montana lawmakers passed legislation to protect children from dangerous gender procedures, Zephyr made floor remarks accusing backers of the bill of having blood on their hands. Now, this is not something new. Zephyr's comments mirrors those often made by transgender activists who claim that denying children such procedures will lead them to make harmful decisions, including suicide. But is that true? Does the evidence suggest something else? Is this designed just to shut down the conversation and put guilt on people and paralyze them with fear? Joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Jennifer Bauwens, the director of the Center for Family Studies here at the Family Research Council. Prior to her work here at the Family Research Council, she worked as a clinician and researcher addressing the effects of psychological trauma. She also testified before the Montana Senate in support of this legislation that we're talking about. Jennifer, welcome back to Washington Watch.
It's good to be with you, Tony.
All right, it's been a tense situation in the Montana State House for more than a week now. You were in Helena earlier in this year testifying before a Senate committee, a state Senate committee on the issue. Can you provide some additional context to what I mentioned about Zephyr making these comments that if you vote for this bill, you'll have blood on your hands?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to commend the Montana legislators for passing this bill to protect children and for their courage, because it takes tremendous courage to fight the transgender activists who really want to, in my view, harm children rather than keep them safe. So that's the context in which we've been testifying in different state houses, is to really protect kids from what should be, it should be by all measures, not something that's rocket science here. Well,
it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, all right? Feel free to do that. But this is like scare tactics. They don't provide. It's just one of those things that in a debate you just throw this thing out here and it just kind of shuts it all down. It's like, well, God told me, and then I mean, who's going to question that? So these kids are going to kill themselves if you vote for this bill. But that's not what the evidence suggests, is it?
No, that's not at all what the evidence suggests. In fact, it suggests the opposite. That there are more complications when kids go through transgender procedures. And look, I mean, we have to keep this in perspective. When have you seen any scientific issue come into this level of debate and protest? I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about, is this intervention, quote unquote intervention, helpful or not? And so we are presenting data and unpacking the research that's been done on this issue, saying that it reduces mental health distress. And we've shown over and over again, country after country has shown that this is not an effective strategy. And so what's left for the other side, when all of the chips are on the table and it's clear that this is not helpful, is to use fear tactics. And I think for this one particular legislator who's obviously bought into the lie that you can be somebody else, that you could be another sex other than what you were born with. When you've invested all of your life into that identity, of course you're going to get really angry when the evidence is shown before you that this is not possible, that you cannot form your biological sex.
So would the evidence suggest, you said that the opposite is true, would the evidence suggest that those that actually go through this process of mutilating healthy bodies, doing in many cases irreversible surgeries and hormone treatments, that the risk of suicide and depression actually goes up?
Yeah. It was a study that we mention a lot because of the accessibility of the medical system that they have in Sweden, where they track national data on everyone, they were able to determine that those who went through transgender procedures were 19 times more likely to commit suicide. So we certainly have that piece of a data point at our disposal, but we also can look at just what we know from other data points, not even the transgender literature, but when we look at those who are going through transgender procedures, many of them have trauma histories, autism, high levels of social media exposure. And we know that those are risk factors for suicidal thoughts as well. So the reality is, if we just factored out the transgender issue altogether, a lot of the folks that are saying they're suicidal or have suicidal ideation would have that regardless of any kind of trans identification.
So you've made the point previously, and I want to make sure I get this correct, that normal protocol would be for those, let's, as you just said, let's push the transgender issue aside for just a moment. If someone came and they had depression and they were inclined toward self-harm, the normal protocol would be for counseling, would it not? It wouldn't be to start treating them with surgeries and irreversible treatments, would it not?
That's right. That's right. You would look for underlying conditions. And I would just say to anyone who's listening and has a child or a family member, someone you care about who's struggling with this, if you're seeing a therapist and they're saying, what's going to help you is to transition, that is a lie. And anyone who coerces you on a path to changing who you are, that is not healthy. It's manipulation. And, I can say this on this program because a lot of us are coming from a biblical worldview. Manipulation is witchcraft. It is a form of witchcraft. And the Holy Spirit leads people and guides and shepherds and is gentle. There's times when he is forceful, but he is a leader. And he will lead with peace. And when you feel that manipulation and control, and that this is the only way or only path you have, just know that that's not coming from a good source. And whether it's from a professional with all kinds of credentials or not, that is not a healthy pathway. It is not a good mental health practice either.
So, Jennifer, that would then apply to lawmakers as well that are considering this, and people say, oh, no, you can't do this because this is going to lead to people killing themselves. That's manipulation. That's manipulation. I mean, it's not just the individuals that are being led down this path, but as a culture, if we're being led down this path by fear and guilt, and this would apply to parents and grandparents who are dealing with children who, through social media contagion, through indoctrination, if you will, in the schools or wherever they're picking this up from their peers, and we've seen a spike in this, so we know something's happening. We shouldn't be operating out of a place of fear and guilt.
Yeah, we shouldn't be legislating from a place of fear and guilt. We should be legislating to health, not out of someone who's throwing a tantrum because they don't get their own way. If we change all of our laws because someone throws a fit, we're going to be in trouble. It's like the kid in the grocery store that throws a fit. If we change everything we're doing to accommodate that childish behavior, we're going to be in trouble. And this really, I just have to say this again, this is not based on science, because we've shown over and over again the problems with the science that's used to scaffold this issue. And we're dealing with something that's way beyond good practice. And we need to recognize that there are obviously spiritual forces at play here, but also there is no scientific basis to this treatment. And also, as it comes down to from research onto practice, this current pathway which I just talked to a psychologist yesterday who has a client who just mentioned that she might have some gender dysphoria. And she told my friend, I don't know if I would actually have this if my trauma was healed. She literally said
Wow.
that. So, so if you have a therapist who's not willing to look at the other issues that might be contributing to the problem, I'd say get yourself another therapist.
Well, the big takeaway here, Jennifer, is we shouldn't be making decisions out of a place of fear manipulation, and that's what we see happening across the spectrum here right now on this issue. Dr. Jennifer Bauwens, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us.
Good to be with you, Tony.